Baby for Hodier. More people have been displaced in the Congo than have been displaced in Gaza. Yet we do not see the same international outrage and protests against the violence that has taken place in the Congo going back to the 1990s. Just over the past year, from the first half of the year, 1 million new Congolese citizens have been displaced from their homes, setting a record 6.9 million people have been displaced in the Congo's growing conflict. And this is an issue that we have discussed here on this channel quite often, as we've discussed rebel groups like M23, who most people believe is being funded by Rwanda, even though that is commonly denied by President Kagame. And we know that the primary reason that this conflict has not seen any type of resolution is due to the destabilization that allows corporate and foreign interests to have free reign and access to the numerous amount of resources that exist in the Congo. So now Kagame is speaking out against the United States, in fact, accusing the United States of what he calls realpolitik in the DRC conflict. And we know that the history of Kagame, with him being trained in Fort Leavenworth here in the United States, that I see some similarities between what could happen with Saddam Hussein eventually happening with him, due to the fact that he's been used as a leader, a dictator, and allowed to stay in office and in power going on 30 years now. And he's been used to keep the region unstable in the same way that eventually, when the U.S. no longer needed Saddam Hussein and they had an agenda to destabilize the Middle East and they no longer needed his services, they pretty much disposed of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through Kagame's training in the United States, I think he's very familiar with how this process works. And, now he's attempting to try to get ahead of what he knows is coming. But recently there was an AU meeting between the president of the Congo and the president of Rwanda, where there was supposed to be peace talks that took place, but those peace talks really only resulted in threats and disagreements being hurled between the two leaders. We know that recently there was a strike last week that took place on the Congolese airport in Goma, a drone strike that the Rwanda military still has not claimed or denied, but they were targeting the army aircraft in the Goma airport, and the drone strikes actually hit civilian aircraft instead of military aircraft. Fortunately, there were no casualties, but we're seeing a rise in military conflict between the two countries. Rwanda is blaming the Congo for what they call pushing for regime change in Rwanda, and this is something that they're also blaming Burundi for, its other neighbor. And I feel as though there should be regime change in the Congo because under the leadership of Kagame, this issue has not been resolved. So we're seeing other countries attempting to step in and aid the Congo in this conflict. Countries like South Africa, who has sent troops to the Congo, and just recently during an attack on a gold mine, South African soldiers killed 14 M23 rebels, and some of their soldiers, I believe 2 or 3 of their soldiers, also died in this attack. So what we're going to see take place, I believe, in my opinion, is an escalation by Western countries to step in because they want, as Eric Prince stated, they want total control now. They no longer need a stage man in office. They want total control of this region. So they're going to step in and try to create more military conflict in this region And then the only thing that, in my opinion, that African countries can do is get on the right side, like South Africa is doing, and use their internal militaries to stop this conflict before it escalates into a full all out world war, where you have, you know, different interests of different countries coming in trying to utilize, you know, their militaries to take control of the region.
Yeah, well, I was not aware that the State Department had made this statement on last Saturday. Said they condemn Rwanda's support for M23 rebels fighting in the Eastern Congo, and they also encouraged the DRC to cease their cooperation with the FDLR. These are the Hutu militias that fled from Rwanda during the ethnocide that took place in 1994, and they set up a base of operations in the Eastern Congo. And so theoretically, M23 and other groups that have been supported by Rwanda, allegedly, or depending on whether you want to rely on sources like the United Nations, were there to protect the native Congolese Tutsi population after, you know, the Hutus that were driven out of Rwanda set up base in the Eastern Congo. So, but we know the real reason is the resources. How amazingly Rwanda has suddenly become one of the world's leading exporters of gold and coltan, and I'm sure cobalt will be next. So this is a real switch from the way Kagame was once viewed, particularly during the administration of Sick Willie Bill Clinton and his chief Africa agent or diplomat, Susan Rice. They protected Kagame during the ethnocide and after the ethnocide that took place in Rwanda in 1994. He has been the darling, the neo-colonial darling of the North Atlantic, the tribes of the North Atlantic, or NATO. And so this switch indicates that, you know, he is replaceable. He's no longer indispensable in order for them to carry out the operations. Now, they never make a move without already having someone identified, or rarely make a move without having someone identified. But, you know, if they can carry out the regime change and have it not result in a total destabilization, as has happened, say in Libya, for example, you know, and you could say Iraq also, because of, you know, ISIS is still, the Islamic State is still operating there, and so, you know, the United States still has troops in Iraq, so, you know, it's clearly not a stable country. So this, you know, it's interesting that they have made that decision, but obviously it's a decision that they've made. They never they don't make moves. They're playing chess. They're thinking 3 moves ahead when they do these things, and sometimes they backfire, right? Because their factors emerge that they can't control. So, you know, we'll see how this plays out, particularly with the intervention of the forces from the South Africa Development Corporation, the SADC forces from, I think they're from Tanzania, Botswana, and South Africa, or is it Tanzania, Malawi, in South Africa? I can't remember now. I know Tanzania, South Africa for sure, have sent forces there to try to control the surge of terrorism by the March 23rd organization. And a lot of people are questioning whether South Africa has the resources, first of all, whether the military has the training, and whether they have the kind of equipment and the resources that they would need, because you're fighting essentially a guerrilla army on their turf, sort of like the United States in Vietnam. It's that becomes a very difficult situation, particularly when they are a battle hardened militia or guerrilla army. As the National Liberation Front was having defeated the French, fought the French for several years after World War II, and finally forced them to withdraw when they defeated them at Dien Bien Phu in 1954. So they were battle hardened. So on paper, when you looked at it, the United States Army versus a ragtag group of uh, Vietnamese guerrilla army, and of course the support they got from the North Vietnamese regular army, who also had participated in the defeat of France. You would say the odds heavily favor the United States, but it didn't turn out that way. And so this is the kind of situation that SADC faces in the Eastern Congo, particularly when M23, because they are a guerrilla army, when when they when territory that they may have taken for a period of time comes under assault, they have sanctuaries that they can flee into, such as Rwanda and some say Uganda also, and regroup, reorganize, rearm, and relaunch. And that's the history of what M23 has been able to do, over the past 20 years or so. So
Well, I would
this,
say the one thing that is a change in them being able to operate so freely now has been the drone strikes that have been taking place using the technology of using the thermal technology, which makes them easier to identify in the region.
Mhm.
And I don't know if South Africa, I don't know if they would have that type of technology without buying the technology from China or Russia or another country who will be able to supply them with enough of that type of technology to halt M23. Because a lot of their soldiers have been killed in these recent drone strikes over the past uh, month or so.
Yeah, including I think on African Insider, uh, several, in fact, troops fighting with M23 who were dressed in normal Rwanda military gear were also killed, and some were captured. And this one particular person they interviewed, of course, now when these people are being interviewed in war situations, you never know how much they've been tortured or how much they've been threatened with torture. So when they're giving an interview, you really don't know. But this guy said, that he was a member of the RPA, the Rwanda Patriotic Army. So, I don't know, but uh, yeah, I'm sure they could probably get the technology, from Turkey or Iran or a number of people who are interested in selling arms. Um, it's a shame that we can't find diplomatic solutions to these problems. And I know that peace in these conflict zones was an item high on the agenda for the 37th African Union Summit that just concluded.
But
Met,
the thing about Kagame is that he continues to deny Rwanda's involvement. So, from his perspective, when he goes to these AU meetings or these peace summits that they have, how can there be peace if one side is not even saying they're in the fight? So Kagame is saying that he's not backing M23, even though, I mean, like you said, I mean, who knows what the UN is reporting, but we've seen, a lot of evidence ourselves from African people that show Rwanda's involvement. And when you try to negotiate a ceasefire between two countries or two people fighting, both people have to at least say they're in the fight.
definitely, definitely. What we do know is there are other groups that that Kagame has backed before the rise of M23. In fact, Laurent Nkunda, a Congolese Tutsi, who I believe has an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court, and I forget which militia now I don't know if it was the Mai Mai or which militia that he ran for several years when his organization, when he was forced to flee. Paul Kagame provided him with a safe haven in Kigali, where to my knowledge he still resides today. So he can't deny that since 1995 that Rwanda has been involved. First they chased the Hutus, they chased out of who fled from the ethnocide in Rwanda, went into the Congo, and the RPA initially chased them and engaged in combat. And this was well known, well documented. It was known by the Clinton administration, known by Susan Rice and others. And everybody turned a blind eye because, well, of course, the United States is one of their primary concepts is the concept of retaliatory violence. So they certainly didn't have a problem with it. Secondly, it was Africans killing Africans. So who's going to stop that other than African people? So yeah, he can deny it, and I suppose, until the African Union or someone else or some other African organization, either the East African Community or SADC or somebody says, you are definitely financing this operation, and so you need to sit down and negotiate. But as long as he's able to deny any involvement, then that makes negotiations virtually impossible, which then leaves the only possible remedy is, some type of military solution. But like I said, every time they drive them out of the areas, they are able to capture areas. Every time they drive them out, they just run into Rwanda and regroup.
One of the ironic things about the amount of people that have been displaced in the Congo is that just last year, Israel was suggesting that Palestinians be migrated to the Congo, along with some other African countries. I believe Chad and can't remember the other country that they were talking about. But you're trying to forcefully migrate people from one war zone into another war zone in a place where 6.9 million people, African people, have already lost their homes.
Yeah, now that report. Yeah, that report was, I think, out of the Times of Israel or Haaretz or one of the others. I can't remember which one now, but the DRC said they were not involved in it. So because the article just said Congo, then some people speculated that it was the PRC, the People's Republic of Congo, and not the DRC. But nevertheless, I mean that was reported in the Israeli news. It was reported in the Zionist news. So I don't think it's any doubt that there was something that they explored before the situation reached the point where it has now, where you have these people look like they're going to be pushed totally out of Gaza into the Sinai, and what will Egypt do at that point? So